Hello, beautiful masters, and welcome back to our series on deep tissue cleansing, where we're continuing to talk about colon cleansing today. So in the last video, we talked about sort of getting into just like why would we bother colon cleansing. And so just to kind of review and recap, getting the toxins that are stored in our cells and our tissues out of our system is a precarious thing, yes? We have talked a lot about how the awakening process is precarious, how the processing process is precarious, and now we're talking about how the elimination phase is also precarious, right? That the colon was not designed to eliminate toxins that have been stored in our bodies, because our bodies weren't really, obviously, in the beginning, designed to store toxins. We have to understand that the capacity for our body to go into storage mode in any way, right? Even in the capacity to store energy in our fat cells when there were times of famine and things, that is an adaptation to unideal circumstances, okay? So we have to understand that these are all unnatural things for the body. The body going into storage mode is an unnatural situation. So this is, again, hopefully helping you to see that we don't live in bodies that are anywhere near being species specific, right? If storage of toxins and storage of fat and storage of energy is such a normal thing in human society nowadays, but if you really think about it, if we were in our pristine, perfect species-specific conditions, that would never happen. And all the biological changes that have to occur in order for that to start to happen, you can see like just that alone shows you that we are not species-specific. We are all in storage mode, and that is a massive adaptation to unideal circumstance, right? That's an adaptation to famine, that's an adaptation to unideal food sources, that's an adaptation to toxins, it's an adaptation. So asking the body to simply naturally remove all of that stuff doesn't make any sense, because it's an unnatural thing that's happening, and therefore we need to employ unnatural solutions. Yes? Now, we don't want to employ crazy, harmful, unnatural solutions. We want to find this perfect little Goldilocks situation, and that is what colon cleansing is. So again, remembering that when we're talking about colon cleansing, we're talking about gently, with the force of gravity only, introducing fresh water into the colon. That's all we're talking about, okay? We're not talking about colon cleanses as in like herbal drinks that we're taking, or fiber drinks, or flushing the colon with coffee or other substances. We're not talking stimulation, okay? We're talking gently introducing extra hydration into the waste that's stored in our colons. And now the second thing we got to understand, right, is that even if we didn't have any stored toxins in our body and we're just working to remove everything we ate yesterday, if you're eating anything other than fresh fruits and vegetables that are incredibly nutrient dense, that's coming from perfect soil, that in the exact amount that your body needed, so no more, no less, in a completely stress-free environment, your colon wasn't designed to remove that either, right? So the fact that we need to understand that our biological species-specific foods were super high in fiber, super high in water, and super high in nutrients. So remembering the food rules of what does the food give us, what does it leave behind, and what does it take with it when it leaves. Ideal food in an ideal body, yes, would be super nutrient dense, so you don't have to eat massive volumes of food to get your nutrient needs met. You just need 2 or 3 pounds, like what the stomach can hold, of a small amount of food, volume-wise. That's still very water rich and very fiber rich. So that water and that fiber actually acts as its own waste removal system. The food comes with its own waste removal system. So even though there would be metabolic byproducts of processing food that need to be released from the body, and metabolic byproducts from just everything that's going on in the body, right? Even the body in the most natural, pristine conditions is gonna produce some toxic byproduct, and that needs to be removed. So that is where the water and the fiber, so the fibers of our foods, these soluble and insoluble fibers, so that are easy to digest, the stuff that comes from fruits and vegetables, that fiber binds to toxic material, binds to metabolic byproducts, binds to all these things that need to leave the body, and again, add bulk to the stool. And then that water, all that hydration, again, is going to literally go through your body, hydrate your body, yes, and also act as a cleansing thing. So that water that by the time it's getting into the colon, that's wastewater now, yeah? That's wastewater that's now being siphoned back into the colon to be absorbed back into the waste, into your stool, to again expand it. And that puts pressure on the walls of the colon, which then stimulates peristalsis, which are the wave-like contractions that move your waste and your food through your system. So if that's the ideal condition, so we have ideally strong colons, only eating ideal food, and again, we never go into a state of stress that causes blood to flow away from the digestive organs, we never interrupt the digestive process, then we would be able to remove everything we ate yesterday. But that is not the situation that any of us are in, right? All of us are eating foods that are nutrient depleted, fiber depleted, water depleted, and we should be, right? We don't want to switch to a completely all raw, 100% fruit and vegetable diet, and we're going to talk about that definitely more in our section on raw foods, which is coming up, but you already know why. That would be way too awakening, right? So again, in an ideal condition, in the ideal body, we can eat this ideal food and have nothing to awaken because our bodies aren't storing anything. So it would never cause a toxic detox reaction because there's nothing to detox, right? If we were in species-specific bodies, completely able to eat a species-specific diet, that's because we don't have toxins to remove. That's because the body isn't storing anything. That's when the ideal condition for eating only fruits and vegetables exists. Yes? The fact that fruits and vegetables awaken stuff and makes us feel sick and can degrade us tells us we can't do that right now. Okay, so as we're doing our awakening work to the degree that's actually responsible for us, remembering that it's a calculated risk, we're doing the awakening, we're doing the processing, we employ colon cleansing as a way of helping our bodies, which have colons that are weak, colons that are stiff, colons that are compacted with waste all through the layers of tissue. So remember, the colon doesn't just have waste in the tube. The tube is only the surface. The colon is actually like a sponge that has layers and layers and layers, and just like everywhere else in the body, the waste is impacting the colon, which is decreasing its capacity to contract and move things out, which is decreasing its its fluidity, its mobility, its strength. And this is why, first reason why we need colon cleansing, because the colons just aren't strong enough to get everything that we're eating out. The second thing, the foods that we're eating are dehydrated, they're fiber low, and therefore they don't expand enough to cause that contraction anyways. So we're building up all this waste. And we're in this situation where 2 or 3 or 4 days of stool can be building up in your colon before it expands enough, before it's big enough, before it's fiber and water rich enough, before it's expanded enough to press on the walls of the colon to cause that contraction. So we can think we're having a bowel movement every single day, we're fine. But really, it's like that's because it's 3 days of impacted waste just over and over and over again, right? We're having 1 bowel movement a day, and we're thinking we're not constipated, even having 3 bowel moves a day, thinking we're not constipated. But that waste could be 3 or 4 days old, and that's not natural. We're not supposed to have waste in our bodies from 2 or 3 days ago. It's only supposed to be 1 day ago, yes? And then again, as we're awakening, we're sending things to the colon from the cells and tissues that are much older than a day ago, much more compacted, much more dehydrated. Even though they've been awakened and processed, they're still compacted and dehydrated. And again, the colon is not strong enough to get that out on its own. That is why we do colon cleansing. So when we're talking about colon cleansing, we're talking about gravity-powered colonics, and we're talking about enemas, water enemas. That's it, okay? nothing else. And if you want more information on this, of course, it's all in the manual. So to get you started with colon cleansing, all you need to do is get yourself an enema bag, all right, and do 1 or 2 enema sessions a week. So you're, of course, going to be combining this with your awakening and your processing work. So you're adding alkalinity, you're improving quality of the food that you're eating, you're moving towards food combining rules, you're doing all that stuff. And then in order to start colon cleansing, it's very, very simple, right? And in the manual, I've given you an exact breakdown of how to do an enema, but I'll just briefly describe it here. What you're going to be doing, okay, is you're going to fill your 2-quart enema bag with water. You're going to hang that 2 or 3 feet above the floor, and then you're going to insert the tube into your rectum, and that is going to feed water into your descending colon, right? So remembering that the colon is like an N, a lowercase n. You have your ascending colon on the right side of the body, your transverse colon goes across the body, and then your descending colon going down into the rectum for release. So when we are doing an enema, basically what we're doing is we're feeding water into the descending colon. All right, you're not filling your entire colon with water. That is not happening. In an enema, it's really just the descending colon. So that colon on the left side, that's hydrating. So right when you the very first round of enema you're doing, that waste that's on the left side, that's in your descending colon, is the hardest, most compacted, most dehydrated waste. It's been in your body the longest, okay? So what you're going to be doing with that waste, so that waste that's going to be naturally less fiber rich and naturally less water rich than it would be if we were eating ideal foods, and it's going to have those old toxins that were stirred up from the body in it. Yes? So that's stuff the body is not designed to remove. That is stuff the colon was not designed to remove. And now we all have weak colons, we all have compacted colons, we all have degraded colons. So again, double, the body can't remove it on its own. So we're feeding water into the descending colon, and you're going to feed that 2-quart bag of water into the colon and hold it in there for 10 or 15 minutes. So what you're doing during that hold is you're allowing the water to saturate the waste, because this is actually what cleans it out, right? If we just put the water in and then release without the hold, we're probably just going to remove mostly the water that we just put in. When we allow for that hold, that water then saturates the waste, hydrates the waste, and that causes it to expand, puts pressure on the walls of the colon, yes? And then that's going to cause the release. So you're going to release what's in the descending colon. And then everything that's in the rest of the colon, everything that's in the ascending colon and the transverse colon can move up and over. Okay, so that's what's happening. You release the descending colon, then just like squeezing a toothpaste tube, right? The contractions, the peristalsis that cause the descending colon to evacuate is happening all throughout the rest of the colon. So that moves the waste that's in the ascending colon up and into the transverse colon, moves the waste that's in the transverse colon down into the descending colon, and then you do the next round, right? Remove what's in the descending colon, and then it moves again, and it moves again. So this is how you can get a complete release of the entire colon with just an enema that's only working on the waste that's in the descending colon, because it moves it along. Every time you have a release, everything that's behind it moves forward, okay? And then, again, when you do a colonic, when you do a gravity-powered colonic, it's the exact same sort of mechanism here, in that there's going to be that gravity, there's the speculum, essentially, that's going to be inserted into your rectum, and it has 2 tubes. The first tube is the water feed tube, and the second feed tube is the waste removal tube. Okay, so in a colonic, the water is still being dripped through gravity into the water insertion tube, yes, and that's flowing into your body with the waste removal tube clamped off. So there's nothing coming out. You're going to fill the colon. So this way you can actually fill the colon a lot more during a colonic. The water is going to be able to flow in and around and fill the whole colon to hydrate all that waste. And then when you feel full, you let your practitioner know you feel full. They open the waste tube, and obviously, right, all that waste that's now hydrated and expanded is going to flow out. And then during the gravity colonic, the water stays on. Okay, so the water that's feeding into your colon is staying on as you're releasing. And this is what actually creates the most ideal emptying condition, because as we're doing this hydrate, right, taking the water, hydrate, release, taking the water, hydrate, release, there's always going to be a little bit left behind that didn't get fully hydrated to be removed, right, but got hydrated enough that it moved into the descending colon. And that's what that water, that continual water stream does, right? That helps to remove just that last bit of waste every round that didn't get fully hydrated to get it out. So you'll get that complete emptying sensation after a colonic. And then what that does, right, is remembering that creates that vacuum in the core of the body where now, number one, all those gases that are stored in your cells and your tissues have a place to diffuse. So remember, diffusion is a gas going from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. So these acidic gases in our systems, right? So remembering, it's not just solid waste that we have stored in our cells and our tissues. It's also acidic gases that we have stored in our cells and our tissues, because we're all fermenting our foods. We're all, right, in this state of stress. We have pathogen overgrowth, which are burping and farting and essentially creating all this acidic waste. We have lactic acid fermentation to get our food, which produces gas. We have all of this gas producing stuff that's going on in our system. And as we create this vacuum in the colon being empty, that gas has somewhere to move. So if you get a colonic and you notice that your belly fills up with gas afterwards, that's what's happening. That's gas is moving from your head, from your, right, all the way down in your body. And also, this vacuum creates like an hourglass effect in the body, in the sense that, like, you know how in an hourglass the sand is all piled up on top of itself, and then there's just the little tube, or the small hole that the sand is being able to be filtered through. So as we remove the waste that's in the colon, we remove the waste that's in the colon, and this creates a situation where the waste that's stored in the walls of the colon can then move into the colon. Yes? So that waste now is moving from this outside of the colon into the inside of the colon. And then all the waste from the rest of the body, you see, is going to start to move down towards the colon, just like in the hourglass. As the sand drips down through that hourglass, the sand at the top moves closer and closer and closer and closer down in. So this is what you have to think of as happening when you're doing your colon cleansing over time. It's literally like the waste is being moved down and down and down and down and down, from the periphery of the body down into the center, from the periphery of the body down into the center, as that vacuum is being created. So this is why this is so powerful, is that every time you create that vacuum of an empty colon that you then have for a little while, right? Because even if you eat before your session, it still takes several hours for food to go from your mouth to your colon. So you're gonna have this time in your day where your colon is empty. And yes, right, we know that that's an unnatural thing, but because we have such an unnatural circumstance in our body, having this unnatural solution that can help us is something we want to employ, is that we have this vacuum in the colon, which causes all the waste in the body to move down in towards the colon for elimination, because the body wants to get rid of it. And this is why colon cleansing is such an important thing. You're not just removing the foods that you ate yesterday. That's not what colon cleansing is. It's about creating this vacuum in the system so that, yes, you're removing the foods you ate yesterday, you're increasing your transit time, you're doing all these things, but it's making room for all the waste that you're awakening and processing for somewhere for them to go so they can be released. It's, if you've got a perpetually filled colon and you're doing all this awakening and processing, it's got nowhere to go, right? Because it has to move from an area of high concentration to low concentration. And if we don't have an area of low concentration for it to move into, which is the colon that is empty, it takes a lot longer for that stuff to be moved out of the system, okay? So we're creating that empty colon for there to be a vacuum state for the body to put all the stuff that you're processing and awakening. That's why we're doing this, okay? So again, look in the manual. There's far more detailed instructions for all this stuff to get started. Always follow your body. Never do anything that feels uncomfortable. ask questions if you're not sure, and I'll see you in the next video.